And so the talk that I would like to give tonight is called Holi, Holi, springing into the goodness of being. Holi, Holi, and seems like a good place to start is to explain what that is. What is Holi, Holi? And Holi, tomorrow is Holi. March 25th is it's a very joyous, colorful holiday in the Hindu tradition. And this holiday of Holi, Holi, dates back to the 4th century. And it celebrates the eternal and divine love of the gods, or we would say the eternal or divine love of the Dharma and the goodness of awakening. And, and technically, it commemorates the return of spring after a long winter. And that return of spring after the winter symbolizes something about good triumphing over the difficulties of the winter period. And so it's about spring, and spring really is about the blossoming of love here in nature and in the world, the blossoming of or the blooming of reality that comes with spring, and the love that we have for spring. And I received actually a note from Spirit Rock yesterday, and the note began, "At last, spring has sprung." And I think that's a really good poetic title. If any of you want to write a poem, you can call it "Spring Has Sprung." And they went on to say, in bearing witness to nature's profound transformation, as sunlight lingers and blossoms emerge, we are invited to awaken from the stillness of winter. We are invited to awaken from the stillness of winter and embrace the world and our practice with renewed energy and vigor. Because spring, the nature of spring, brings this renewed energy and vigor. And so it's about the goodness and wonder of rebirth that happens cyclically around the world, or around our world, with the different seasons. And that goodness and the wonder of rebirth or renaissance that comes both in big cycles and also in small cycles. And I'll say more about that. But I was noticing it because I swam in the bay yesterday. As many of you know, I swim in the bay at the South End Rowing Club, and I had a swim, and it was really a really lovely to swim, lovely to be in the water, and the water was a little bit warmer. When you swim in the bay, you notice if the water's a little bit warmer, it's a good thing. And it was part of what I felt like was part of spring, sprunging. It sprung in the water. And what was interesting was then I went into the sauna. You go for a shower in a sauna afterwards, and I'm in the men's sauna. And and I've just had this swim, and I'm just totally happy. And I feel renewed by the freshness of the water and the swim and the beauty of the day and the sky and the world. And the guys were complaining all over the place about nothing. They were complaining about just whatever they were complaining about, oh, this happened, that happened, and they're talking mostly about the club or the sauna, or people are doing this, or people are doing that. And they're kind of fetching about like nothing important. It wasn't like they're upset about the wars in the world or the killing of the war. They're upset about, there's not enough places to hang my towel on in the sauna, or things like that. And I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, are you kidding? And appreciating the real budding of spring and the warmer water and the sun that coming through the clouds, because it was cloudy also, and also appreciating the goodness and the privilege of swimming in the bay and being there. and the privilege of being able to swim and have a sauna, and also share the sangha of swimmers, because it's a strong sangha of people who do that kind of practice, because it's a practice for everybody and people are just devoted to it. I mean, the heartfeltness and the love of it and the devotion, and a lot of people swim every day, which I don't do, but I swim 3 to 4 times a week, and I'm happy with that. Um, and so just appreciating the aliveness that came with a spring day in the water. And I saw this poem today from Billy Collins, and the poem's name is Today. And so I'll give you the poem of Today. And Billy Collins wrote, he said, "If ever there were a spring day so perfect, so uplifted by a warm, intermittent breeze, that it made you want to throw open all the windows in the house and unlatch the door to the canary's cage. Indeed, rip the little door from its jamb. A day when the cool brick paths and the garden bursting with peonies seemed so etched in sunlight that you felt like taking a hammer to the glass paperweight on the living room end table and releasing the inhabitants from their snow-covered cottage." He's pretty funny. "Releasing the inhabitants from their snow-covered cottage so they could walk out holding hands and squinting into this larger dome of blue and white. Well," he says, "today is just that kind of day." And today actually was a beautiful day. I got out a little bit and it was just beautiful. And it's spring. Spring is happening. Spring is sprung. And spring is celebrated in almost every tradition. And because I'm talking a little about Holi, right, which is from the Hindu tradition, but it's also the same kind of spring festivals, celebrations, and and um, and devotions are in many traditions. They're in Christianity as Easter, and in Judaism as Passover, and in Persia it's called Nowruz, and Nowruz is spring, is part of the new year. Or in Thailand, it's Songkran, which, excuse my pronunciation, but I'm trying here to say it a little more like somebody in Thailand might say it, and which is about the Buddhist New Year, actually. And then, of course, there's the equinox in Teotihuacan, Mexico, where the pyramid is. And and in the and there's different components of this kind of celebration of spring. And in the Jewish tradition, it's reflecting about the Hebrew people's freedom from slavery in ancient Egypt, and people do that by eating certain food that is not rich but very simple, because of the fleeing from Egypt. They couldn't take rich food. And they also eat bitter herbs, symbolizing the kind of difficult experience of the people who were enslaved. And then people are supposed to reflect on their ancestors' slavery and celebrate their independence. And in Christianity, the celebration is Easter, which marks the day Christ is said to have come back to life. And so it's a celebration of Christianity and a celebration of new beginnings and a celebration of a kind of magical being born after died, and also about the changing of the season. And technically, this is Palm Sunday today. And so it's part of that whole sphere of celebration that we call Easter. And as I said, in India, it's Holi, Holi, and really a festival of color, which is so interesting. It's not in the worlds that I grew up in, where I've never seen that, but the festival of color, where people paint themselves different colors and throw colors at one another. And it marks the end of winter and the triumph of good over difficult. And as I said, and it's celebrated also with bonfires and eating sweets and dancing. And in Iran, Nowruz means new day, and it's about the Iranian New Year. And it marks the beginning of spring and the Persian New Year, which is celebrated by people in Iran. And they do it by cleaning. They do it by cleaning homes and having a big feast. And they have different items they eat that symbolize different principles, such as love or rebirth or friendship or community. And so, and I'm giving you a lot of details here just to give you a big picture of how universal spring is celebrated and how religiously spring is celebrated. It means something to people. And in Thailand, Songkran, that's closer, is really about the Thai New Year's. And it's all about making a fresh start with a splash. And if you've ever been to Thailand or you've ever seen this, it's the splash is about water, because water plays a big role in Thai New Year. That one symbolically washes away the previous year so that people can get ready for the new year. And water is used both to clean homes and to sprinkle water on Buddha statues, or you sprinkle water on the hands of elders. And it's celebrated in many different Buddhist countries, not just Thailand, although it's very significant there. It's also China or Vietnam or Sri Lanka or Myanmar or Laos or Cambodia or Bangladesh. You know, wherever there's some flavor of this kind of practice, those were countries I saw it in. And then really interesting to me was the spring equinox at Teotihuacan in Mexico. And at that great pyramid, people who dress in white to symbolize purity, they celebrate the spring equinox by climbing 360 steps to the top of the pyramid to get closer to the portals of energy. And so, and the way I hear that is they're getting closer to God or to the divine or to the source or to who and what they really are. And they raise their arms toward the sky, basking in the sun's warmth, and they soak up the energy for the year. And I mentioned before that it's Palm Sunday. It's also known as Passion Sunday, which I like. I always like how that the passions get mixed with spirituality. And it is the start of Holy Week, and it symbolized when Jesus entered Jerusalem and he was greeted by people who were waving palms, big palm leaves, not just the leaves, the whole branch, I believe. And it's a beautiful reminder for people in the Christian tradition to welcome Jesus, and that the heart of Jesus into their hearts, the love that Jesus symbolized. And according to the Gospels, he rode on a donkey into Jerusalem, and the celebrating people laid down their cloaks and small branches of trees in front of him and singing the psalm. And the psalm is, "Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord." And of course, we could modernize that a little bit and also Buddhize it a little bit. Blessed is one who comes in the name of awakening, or the divine, or the numinous, or the holy, Holy, right? Because all of us come here because of that, I believe. whatever form it takes for you, there's something numinous that brings you here. And spring brings change. It's a change of season. And so that kind of change, excuse me, symbolizes impermanence and rebirth and the holiness of being springing into the world through nature and the power of nature. And I asked somebody, actually, I asked my nephew, who's done a good amount of Buddhist practice, and I said, well, what do you think I should say? What is spring about? And he said an interesting thing. He said, spring is the most acute reminder of the cyclical nature of reality. Spring is the most acute reminder of the cyclical nature of reality. And reality is not static, it's changing, it's impermanent, and it's ending and it's beginning. And spring is one of the, I'm adding on to what he said now, but spring is one of the beginnings. And the word has many meanings that we can understand through the Dharma. So I'm going to give you some of the meanings and some of my Dharmic interpretations. So one thing spring means is to move or jump suddenly or rapidly forward. And in my Dharma understanding, it means the deepening of Dharma can happen at any time, at any place, in any moment. The deepening of our realization can happen like that. And then spring means it's an informal meaning is to bring about the escape or release of a prisoner. And sometimes you might see it in movies. Somebody will get out of jail and say, "Oh yeah, I got sprung," or can you spring me from this sentence or from this jail cell? Things like that. And so I hear that as the freedom from the suffering is also possible here. It's possible we can get sprung from our dukkha, from our difficulty, and I'll talk more about that later. I'll be more personal about that. And then to spring means to originate or arise from, which is really a lovely way to understand what a spring is, to originate or rise from. And then it went on to say in the dictionary, to rise from madness or creativity could spring from the same source. And that's very interesting dharmically, because the divine or the numinous is right here and can open to us to the new, and open us to the new, or open us to the wondrous, or open us to the unexpected, or open us beyond ourselves, beyond our ego identity, which is one of the things that Dharma practice will do. It takes us beyond Eugene and the conventional understanding of self. Even though it doesn't throw it away or doesn't deny it, there's more than Eugene or Helen or Jesse or Don or Sue or Amy or Isabel than just the usual egoic identification. And then more different ways that spring is talked about is appearing suddenly or unexpectedly, like sometimes tears spring from someone's eyes. And to me, dharmically, it's about the wonder of insight. It's a surprise sometimes. We're not expecting it. It just springs on us, and it gives itself to us, and we get it. And we get it, and it may even bring tears sometimes. Even the good understanding can bring tears because something lets go, something releases. And of course, you technically know that it's the season after winter and before summer, right? Everybody's got that about spring, I hope. And what I found interesting is that it means vegetation begins to appear in the northern hemisphere from March to May, but in the southern hemisphere from September to November. So there are different springs. And I love that dharmically because there's not one way. There are so many ways we can awaken if we just keep practicing. That there's new growth in us is possible, even when we don't know how to get there, or we don't expect it at this time, or at 3 in the morning, or whenever it might arise. And it said in spring, the garden is a feast of blossom. And I understand that dharmically as recognizing the feast of being a true human being, not just a human doing. And that is recognizing the feast of consciousness, of embodied consciousness, the feast of awareness, and the feast of that which knows. And what's great is in meditation, there's always room for spring, for a new beginning. Each moment is always springing into existence, always. No matter what we think, it's brand new. It's the spring. It's the first blossom of now. And one of the beautiful teachings that we often offer in meditation practice, and I believe I said it tonight, is you can always begin again. It's always spring in your meditation practice. It's always good to begin again. And don't give up. Don't ever give up. The Dalai Lama says that all the time. Don't ever give up. Begin again. And here's a beautiful poem from Ada Limon, who's a Mexican-American woman who the name of the poem is Instructions on Not Giving Up. And she says, more than the fuchsia funnels breaking out of the crabapple tree, more than the neighbor's almost obscene display of cherry limbs shoving their cotton candy colored blossoms to the slate sky of spring rains. It's the greening of trees that really gets me. And I'll go on, but I'm going to read it again because it's a great number of lines. She said, more than the fuchsia funnels breaking out of the crabapple tree, more than the neighbor's almost obscene display of cherry limbs shoving their cotton candy colored blossoms to the slate sky of spring rains. It's the greening of trees that really gets me. When all the shock of white and taffy, the world's baubles and trinkets leave the pavement strewn with the confetti of aftermath, the leaves come, patient, plodding, a green skin growing over whatever winter did to us, a return to the strange idea of continuous living despite the mess of us, the hurt, the empty. Fine then, I'll take it, the tree seems to say, a new slick leaf unfurling like a fist to an open palm. I'll take it all. Beautiful poem about not giving up and spring and the blossoming of our own heart's openness. And spring, more about spring, its ability to spring back strongly with a kind of elasticity. And that also is something that comes with Dharma practice. Over time, we just start rediscovering the pliability and flexibility of being human, of consciousness itself. That all kinds of things happen, and yet consciousness is right here. And it doesn't mean the things are good, but still there's a flexibility that allows us to be here now. In spring, also, they talk about it as a sudden jump upward or forward, like a sudden spring. They say, like a sudden spring, somebody leapt onto the table. And that's part of the sense of freedom that comes with practice. It's the freedom to see that, oh, I can do this. I can do this practice. And I can do this life, even though it's difficult. And I can be this person I am and keep waking up. And I can do it in different ways and discovering different capacities, whether it's in intellectual capacities or athletic capacities, or in different kind of skillful means in terms of work and things like, or parenting, or whatever it might be for one. And somebody who gave me this, I'm trying to remember who gave me this poem from, I can't remember. Somebody gave it to me because I asked people about spring, and they said, "Oh, this is a poem." Oh, it was my sister-in-law gave me this poem, who's been a teacher in public schools for 35 years in New York, and it's for kids. But I thought we're all kids at heart, so here's the poem. It's called "Spring Is" by a woman named Bobby Katz. And she says, spring is when the morning sputters like bacon and your sneakers run down the stairs so fast you can hardly keep up with them. And spring is when your scrambled eggs jump off the plate and turn into a million daffodils trembling in the sunlight. And you hear the beauty and the innocence and the joy and the delight that kids have, right, running down the stairs so fast. Hmm. And as I said this earlier, but also springs also has this possibility of escaping or release from prison. And I said, and dharmically, I said, when we have been sprung out of our own emotional or mental incarceration, whether it's about a person or a situation or experience. And personally, I was really aware of this yesterday. And I'll tell you this personal story of my own dukkha. And it wasn't the worst dukkha, but it was dukkha. And the story is, I've had guests here for the last 5 days, my brother and his wife, and Pam's away teaching in Montana. And so I'm with them, and I'm hosting them, and I'm trying to take care of them. And it's my older brother. He's 82 now. He's 82, and he's getting older. And it's like, oh, and he's a different person because we're all different at different phases of life. He's a different person now. So I'm just getting to know him as he is not older and with this kind of change, and and I need to keep discovering who he is and to see what's he capable of, or what's his pace, or what does he understand, or what does he need, or what's his limitations, or what are his capacities, because it's different, and it's different even than the last time I saw him. And he's slower now, and he's he's mostly what we would say fine, but he's not as quick as he used to be physically or mentally. uh, and um, and so he's been here, and and also I'm seeing, well, who am I with him? And it's a little feeling like, not just the older brother, but a little more parental. I felt more parental with him, like, oh, I have to take care of him. And and so I was trying to do that and seeing what he needed, and all going fine. But he's also an artist, and he had given me a sculpture. He made a glass sculpture, a Buddhist glass sculpture he'd given me 15 years ago, and it goes into a wall, and it's a big deal to put it in the wall. But it had a chip on it. He wanted to replace the chip. And so I had to get a lot of different things for him before he came, of certain kind of glue and glass cutter and piece of glass, and there was something else I had to get. Oh, a certain kind of ruler so he could cut the glass while it's next to the ruler, and things I don't even know about, but he wanted to do it. And I said, great, great. And then he was slowly doing it all while he was here. And then, they left this morning and it wasn't done yet. And so last night he thought it was all done. And there's a special frame that was made in the wall that this goes into. So you walk by it and it's part of the wall, and you look into it and it's mirrored and you see all these Buddhas. It's really a Buddha realm. And he thought he had finished, and then he couldn't get it into the wall. It wouldn't fit. And I don't know what happened. All I know is he told me to get a certain thing of glass. I asked for what he wanted. They didn't have that. He said what they had was good enough. It was a little bit bigger. So he said it won't go in. It won't go in. This is like at 9:30 at night last night, and I've had a long day. I'm tired. All I want to do is watch a little TV and go to sleep. And actually, I have to tell you, I'm watching a good documentary called Born in Chicago, and it's about the blues in Chicago in the 60s. Very cool. Muddy Waters and Howlin' Wolf and Buddy Guy and all these young white kids who are learning from them, like Mike Blumenthal and Al Cooper and Charlie Musselwhite. And anyhow, good movie. This is a little aside, but so anyhow, so my brother wants to to explain this to me. I'm like, I don't want to talk to you. Just deal with it. And because I was too tired, and I was more in the winter of my day. Right, I'm good in the morning. That's spring for me in the morning. I'm an early morning person, and so I just didn't want to even talk to him. And I could see he was upset because he couldn't get it in there. And it's like, and inside I think, okay, you deal with it. And I go to sleep, and because I'm just trying to take care of myself, and I'm furious actually in my mind. I'm angry. I'm like, you fucker, why did you wait till the last minute to do this? And then I'm talking to myself, right? I'm in bed trying to go to sleep, and I'm talking to myself. This doesn't happen for me very often, but it happened last night. And it was a certain kind of dukkha had sprung, and it was like my mind going, going, going. And finally I did something I haven't done in a long time. I started doing metta for myself, and I did metta practice. And this is something I did after my bad bicycle accident. In the middle of the night, when I didn't know what else to do, I would just do metta, and it would calm me down slowly. And so I'm doing the metta, and of course, and I do a form of metta. I do, may I be safe, protected, free from inner and outer harm, which my mind is part of the inner harm. May I be free, protected from inner and outer harm. May I abide in happiness, true happiness. May my body be as healthy as possible, and may I live with ease of well-being. Those are the phrases that I play with. So may I be safe, happy, healthy, and at ease. And I'm doing it, and of course the anger is breaking through the metta. I'm cursing at my brother, and I'd given him a bunch of clothes because I always give him a little bit of this and that, and I was like, I started planning on taking back my generosity. I was going to take back the clothes. I mean, really, it was like, and the only reason I can talk about this was finally I got to sleep. I still woke up a few times. I was totally pissed every time I woke up. I did the metta. I went back to sleep. And finally in the morning, I woke up and I was refreshed a little bit. And I could even see whatever happened, we'll deal with it. This is like not high class Stuka, right? This is just, we can't get the fucking piece of artwork in the wall. Okay, I'll live with that. And I'll figure out what to do. And then I came down here because my office is in the basement, and I did my early morning practices, stretching, sitting, and then I hear him get up. So I think, okay, I'll go up and talk to him. And I go up and I said, okay, what happened? And he starts telling me detail. I'm like, I don't want the detail. What happened? He said, basically, he thinks the glue that we used, which I can't remember the name of, there was a certain kind he had me get, was too thick, and it thickened the whole thing, and so it wouldn't go in. And I'm like, can't we force it in? He's like, you can't force it. It's glass, right? You break it. I said, well, let's just see. And we put it in, it gets in. And he goes and does something. I take it out and I see there's a light above that was installed. So it goes down into the sculpture. So it lights the sculpture. And the light has, I push the light up, and it's not static. And so I realized, oh, I'll push it up, and then I could get the whole thing in. And I said, come here, let's get this in. He comes back, and we got the whole thing in because I pushed on the light, and it worked. And it just, the fixture of whatever it had, it wobbled. I didn't care, but it was great because we got it in, we got it done. And then it was like that was spring leading to summer, right? I was happy. You know, it was like it was warm. We were happy. I loved him again. I wasn't going to throw him out of the house until he was going to leave. But it was really intense, that kind of practice. And that's why practice is so important, because I stayed with my reactivity with myself in the middle of the night, really, because I thought about throwing him out in the middle. Really, my mind was just ridiculous, because minds are ridiculous sometimes. And so there was some ability to go to that source of the Dharma that's right here, right? And of course, one of the things spring means is it's the where water wells up from an underground source. And so the spring Dharma springing into consciousness was right here. And it was here even in the difficulty, just to not act out um, on my ignorance, on my upsetness, on my emotions. And I know that's hard. It was hard for me last night, but it's doable. It's doable, and it's part of our practice. And then we get to the springtime, right? Springtime of our day, right? It means, and springtime has to do with our heyday or our bloom or our flowering or blossoming. And that happens over and over again in the Dharma, the springtime of our creativity, of learning and opening and landing in ourselves and blooming, and the blooming of our understanding, right? And we can recognize it in ourselves and others. And I'll end the talk tonight with a poem by Mary Oliver, who's got a number of poems about spring. And this one goes, somewhere a black bear. Somewhere a black bear has just risen from sleep and is staring down the mountain all night in the brisk and shallow restlessness of early spring. I think of her, her black fists flickering the gravel, her tongue like a red fire touching the grass, the cold water. There is only one question: how to love this world. I think of her rising like a black and leafy hedge to sharpen her clothes against the silence of the trees. Whatever else my life is, with its poems and its music and its glass cities, it is also this dazzling darkness coming down the mountain, breathing and tasting. All day I think of her, her white teeth, her wordlessness, her perfect love. Okay, everybody, we'll end with a sharing of merit, and may the goodness and blessing of our time together, may it go out in every direction, touching beings in every realm. May it bring spring into the hearts of all beings everywhere. May all beings be happy, peaceful, safe, free. May all beings awaken.